So over the weekend, the United or UWW, which is the main governing body of wrestling, had their World Championship tournament. So there were 10 different weight classes that were contested. I'll just go through the results, both in terms of who got to the top of the podium, but then also how Team USA did at each of those weights. So we start off with 57 kilograms, which is around 125 pounds. Our guy was Dayton Fix. He ended up earning the spot by beating Thomas Gilman. Gilman was a world silver medalist back in 2017. In the finals, he lost to a guy by the name of Yuki Takahashi. Unfortunately for Fix, he had to face Takahashi in the second round. So despite a first round win, he lost to Takahashi in the second round. And one of the weird things about how the UWW does their brackets is that rather than doing it like the NCAA, where no matter where you lose, it's double elimination. So you go back into a back draw and can wrestle all the way back to third. So in theory, you could lose the first round match to a guy who loses his next match, and you can still wrestle all the way back to third. In this kind of a tournament, you can only wrestle back if the guy you lose to makes it to the finals. So unfortunately for Fix, Takahashi did not make the finals, and so he had no chance to wrestle back. So he loses after two matches. He was done. But the guy who ends up winning it all is Uguya from Russia at 61 kilograms. This was the weight that we had Tyler Graffin. He made a good little run there. So he lost to the gold medalist, Lomatadze. He lost that match 3-1. Lomatadze ended up winning 6-1 in the final. So really good tournament from Graf. Wins his first two matches, loses to Lomatadze, then wins another match, and then in his opportunity to get bronze, he ends up losing. So no medal for Tyler Graf, but still a pretty good tournament out of him. At 65 kilograms, we had Zane Rutherford. Now, again, this is the weight class where Zane Rutherford and Yanni Giacomo Haas were going back and forth for most of this year, trying to earn the spot. Yanni had 2 wins against Zane. Zane had 2 wins against Yanni. The thing is that when Yanni beat Zane, it didn't count for the spot. When Zane beat Yanni, it did. So Zane gets the spot, and because we're in a sport where they think it's a good idea to have one person per country, Yanni Giacomo Haas, despite having a win over the bronze medalist Bajrang Punia, despite having that win earlier this year, he ends up just sitting at home getting absolutely nothing, while Zane Rutherford has a tough loss in the first round to Alejandro Valdez of Cuba. But Rashidov ends up winning the weight class. As I mentioned before, Bajrang took bronze. And then from Kazakhstan, Dalit Niazbekov took silver. At 70 kilograms, we had James Green. Wins his first match 10-0, but then loses a close match to Gadzhiev of Poland in the second round. As far as who wins the weight class, David Bayev of Russia wins that, defeating a Kazakhstani in the finals. Again, good performance out of Kazakhstan, getting another guy in the finals there. At 74 kilograms, Jordan Burroughs and Zarabek Sidikov had a fantastic semifinal match. Burroughs goes up 3-2 late. Sidikov is able to get a push out with a little over 1 second left to tie it 3-3, which would have given him the edge on criteria. Burroughs decides to challenge just because you're going to lose anyway. They lose the challenge. So it ends up being 4-3, but in reality it was 3-3. But because they don't do overtime in Olympic wrestling or in freestyle wrestling, Sidikov gets the win there. He then ends up beating Frank Chamizo in the finals. And then Burroughs wins in his bronze medal match. So Burroughs takes third, Sidikov first, and Chamizo second. At 79 kilograms, Kyle Dake, who at times it was a question of whether or not he'd be able to make it to this tournament, was having some injury issues. Alex Derringer, in the meanwhile, was just dominating at the world scene. Ends up facing off against Kyle Dake in what was considered a 1-2 matchup in the world. Dake wins there. Dake was the reigning world champion from 2018. Comes over here and just, I guess, for the most part, you would say he dominated. He won 12-2, 5-1, 6-1, and then in the finals he won 4-2. But the 2 points he gave up were just late push-outs while he was well ahead 4-0 and just trying to kill off the clock. So for Kyle Dake, really big win here. Goes back-to-back at World Championships. Unfortunately for him, he's going to either have to go down to 74 kilograms and try to beat out Jordan Burroughs for a spot in the Olympics, or have to go up to 86 and deal with David Taylor. World champions either way, so he's a world champion as well, but it's not going to be an easy road for him. But it's nice to see him get a second world title here. He's a guy who probably could have a lot more hardware to his name, but because, as I mentioned before, because you can only have one guy per country, and he's got guys like David Taylor, guys like Jordan Burroughs that he has to beat out just to even make the team. Him being a 2-time world champion, as great as that is, it could probably be a lot better right now if it were in a different system. At 86 kilograms, Hassan Yazdani ends up winning. This is the weight class that David Taylor won last year. Taylor was unable to compete this year because he got injured during Beat the Streets. So the guy who ends up benefiting out of that would be Pat Downey. So Downey makes the team didn't really have a great international showing prior to this, but had a pretty decent tournament. So he won his first 2 matches, and then lost to Dudarov of Germany. So decent job by him. But Yazdani ends up getting a medical forfeit in the finals against Deepak Punia, and then Russia gets a bronze medalist here as well. At 92 kilograms, Jaden Cox, who is the reigning world champion, defends that world title, doesn't give up a single point in the process, so he wins 11-0, 8-0, 3-0, and 4-0. So great performance by him. He's probably going to have to go up to 97 kilograms for the Olympics and deal with Kyle Snyder, which again is unfortunately we have 2 world caliber guys who are going to have to face each other, and one of them's going to have to sit out for the Olympics. But again, just like the UWW, the Olympics only lets one person go per country, so that's kind of the system you have to deal with. Speaking of Kyle Snyder, he loses to Sharifov. So Sharifov ends up getting to the finals, and he loses a close match to Sajalayev. I guess 4-0 isn't super close, but he ends up losing to Sajalayev. So Sajalayev repeats. We were hoping that we'd see Sajalayev versus Snyder for the 3rd time here, with each of them having 1 win apiece. But with Sharifov getting that win over Kyle Snyder, that never really ended up working out. But then Snyder had to beat Otakazi, a guy who has a win over him in the bronze medal match, and Snyder was able to do that. So at least Snyder ends up getting that loss back, but it seems as though he's got some tough guys just in the weight class and at least internationally with Sharifov and Sajalayev, but then also having to deal with a guy like Jaden Cox next year is going to be pretty tough for him as well. So while he came out of the gate really fast, ended up winning 3 straight world titles between World and Olympics, has had a little bit of trouble recently, still medaling, but it's going to be really tough for him to make the team next year. If he does make it, that's great, but it'll be a challenge even then at that point, because you got guys like Sajalayev, Otakazi still probably going to be there, Sharipov's going to be there. So it'll be interesting to see how this affects the Olympics moving forward. And then a heavyweight, Nick Wisdowski. Unfortunately for him, he loses in his first round, doesn't get pulled back into the back draw, so it's just 1 and down for him. So not much there. As far as the women go, we had 3 world champions in the freestyle for women. So let me just pull that up real quick. So at 50 kilograms, we had Whitney Condor just going 1 and done. She had lost. Sarah Hildebrandt wins her first match, loses the next 2, so she finishes in 9th place. We had Jakara Winchester winning Worlds, wins her first match 10-0, then 13-2, 6-4, and 5-3. So some closer matches in the semis and the finals, but she gets it done. Then we got Jenna Burkert, wins her first match, loses her second match. Allie Reagan loses her first match and doesn't get pulled back in. Kayla Miracle wins her first 2 matches, but then loses her third. Then we have Forrest Molinari. I did a little bit of a segment about her on a recent podcast, just talking about how she's talking about getting into MMA. So it still seems like her plan is to go through the Olympics and then maybe go through one more full cycle after that. But she finishes 5th here, so decent finish for her. Tamara Mensah-Stock, she is a world champion, very dominant performance. So 10-0, 6-1, 10-1, 10-0. So great job by her. We had Victoria Francis finish 5th, lost her first match, or won her first match, lost the next 2, but it just worked out where she was still able to place top 5. And then we had Adeline Gray win her 5th world title with wins by the score of 10-0, 10-0, 10-0, and then 5-2. So great job there. Team USA's got 3 women's gold medalists. In the men's, it didn't work out quite as well. They had 2 with Dake and Cox, but Snyder was in the mix, Burroughs was in the mix. You'd have to figure David Taylor, when he comes back, he'd be in the mix. So at least at the upper weights, Team USA is looking good. At the lower weights, they have guys who can compete, but they aren't like steady guys who you can count on making it to the medal stand. So hopefully over time that improves. But either way, not the worst performance from Team USA. They end up finishing 3rd, with Russia finishing 1st. Kazakhstan potentially benefiting from the bit of a home field draw where a lot of their guys are put on easier halves of draws. They finished 2nd. US 3rd, slightly ahead of Iran, finishing 4th.